8,000 Israeli soldiers are being sent to Honduras as part of a treaty with Israel and the U.S. The soldiers' main mission will be to train the armed forces and national police of Honduras in border protection to stop migrants fleeing Honduras to the U.S. The Israeli soldiers will share space at the United States permanent military base in Palmerola. Honduras also has a 10-year agreement with Israel to purchase arms and other military equipment. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that there is no support for military intervention in Venezuela. Lavrov made the remarks after a meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The two are in Finland for the meeting of Arctic countries.
During my contacts with my U.S., European and South American colleagues, I did not see any support for a reckless military solution in Venezuela. I hope this overall understanding will be put into practice, and there will be no military solution because it would be catastrophic.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much other than I made clear our view that the Venezuelans deserve a democracy that doesn't have any foreign party running their country or involved in their country on a consistent basis in a military way, right? So we want the Cubans out, we want the Iranians out, we want Russia's military out. We had that conversation, and we started to talk about how our interests might be able to find a way forward. I don't know that we'll get to the right place, but we'll have further conversations.
Meanwhile, Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has confirmed there is a group of Russian military experts in his country. The group aims at further deepening cooperation between the two countries, especially regarding military technology. Arreaza has also said plans to move the offices of state-owned oil company PDVSA from Portugal to Russia are underway. The move hasn't been finalized yet, but Arreaza said the company continues to function smoothly and will participate in an upcoming international forum on oil production.
We really hope that Russia will import more oil from Venezuela, but what we really hope for is to see Russia produce oil with Venezuela. We hope Russia invests more in our different companies. We have a joint company that can produce more, and we are confident that Russia will have all the necessary resources to invest more in the oil sector in Venezuela, and that this oil will benefit both countries, that the profits of this are shared. We are sure this will happen.
Our correspondent in Russia, Hansel Oro, has more details.
The Venezuelan foreign minister, Jorge Arreaza, has given a press conference here in Russia where he has said that the U.S. sanctions against Venezuela are a criminal blockade that aim to overthrow the government by making the people suffer. Arreaza also highlighted the more than 5 billion euros that are frozen in the country by international banks that support the U.S. and the 1 billion euros in gold that are frozen in the U.K. The Venezuelan foreign minister once again said that the government is willing to have dialogue with the opposition, a discussion that Arreaza already had with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in a previous meeting. Arreaza also said that there is a need to create a special group of countries inside the United Nations that agree to prevent the U.S. from entering Venezuela. At the same time, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met during an international forum in Finland, during which Lavrov rejected a military intervention in Venezuela by the U.S., saying it would be a serious violation of international law.
We thank Hansel for that report. A report with possible key outcomes in Venezuela was published by the U.S. State Department late last month and then was promptly deleted. It reportedly talks of the United States' role in damaging Venezuela's economy, trying to destabilize the military, and of controlling the opposition. The document is dated April 24th, 6 days before last week's failed coup attempt. The document also claims that U.S. policy prevented the Venezuelan government from accessing international markets and ensured the freezing of its assets abroad. Venezuelans have been the victims of a commercial blockade for several years now. U.S. activists have denounced the international and regional political aggression and also highlight social protection policies that continue despite the siege. Luisa Vera brings us this report from Caracas.
Venezuela remains in the crosshairs of White House attacks, threats, and blockades. But social projects in the country don't stop. And that's something that international delegations see as an example of a nation in resistance.
I came here to Venezuela to participate in a housing conference without a tremendous amount of background information in what's going on here. And one of the first things that I learned is that the Constitution in Venezuela has a right to housing, a right to jobs, a right to health care. And what I have learned in the conference, which is that 2.6 million housing units have been built for people here with an anticipation of 5 million entirely, that's not just affordable, but that people cannot be evicted from, is incredible to me.
For them, the reality doesn't line up with the picture painted by the United States and distributed by international media.
I've seen here in Venezuela is a country where people go to work, go to class, go to the beach, go to restaurants, go to concerts, and act like anyone else in any other country in the world. It's a country that functions perfectly normally. People are obviously in support of the Chavista revolution here. That's very strong. Of course, there are opponents, but they're able to function as well. We see most of the newspapers here are controlled by the right-wing opposition. A large part of the television is, but everything functions perfectly well. People function, people work perfectly easily with what they have here.
The activists said that they now have a first-person account of life in Venezuela.
Of course, I know a fair amount about Venezuela, so I'm not completely shocked. But I have to say that I am shocked by the extreme distortion of the media in the United States. I mean, to use Photoshop to distort pictures, to give pictures of Guaido with lots of people when there's only a few people with him, to give the impression that Maduro doesn't have support. I mean, I was at the rally here on May 1st. The people expressed tremendous love and tremendous support, and the enthusiasm of the people. That is, of course, never, never conveyed in the United States. Maduro is presented as a dictator, as a fascist almost. I mean, extreme, with lies, lies, lies, lies, lies.
The international delegations that visited Venezuela have witnessed the social achievements the government of Nicolas Maduro offers to its citizens, and highlighted that the Bolivarian country is an example of resistance despite the attempts to create chaos, which have been defeated on the streets through peace.
But Venezuela isn't the only country the United States seeks to intimidate. Washington's National Security Advisor John Bolton has released a statement saying that the U.S. is deploying an aircraft carrier to send a message to Iran. The document cites troubling warnings but fails to clarify these any further. Many analysts have said it is unlikely the White House took the decision to send the aircraft carrier to the region over the past weekend. An official Navy statement said the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group left its station for a regular deployment on April 1st. Instead, the journey will have been planned well in advance. However, the escalation of rhetoric raises concerns for peace in the region. Hundreds of students and teachers have protested in Brazil against budget cuts in public education. They rallied outside a military high school in Rio de Janeiro, where President Jair Bolsonaro was attending a ceremony. The protesters denounced the 30% cut in public funds for federal education institutions, which were announced by the government last week. The students carried banners that said, quote, "Education is not an expense, but an investment."
This government has been repeatedly attacking education by cutting funding in sociology, philosophy, and now it's attacking the federal institution that produces 95% of university studies that come out of Brazil.
This government is promoting a complete dismantling of the country. All that's been built up to now is being destroyed, and it's going to take many years to rebuild everything. So we are here against the dismantling, against this government, and against the cuts in education, science, and technology.
A New Uruguayan law for trans people has gone into effect. Trans people will now be allowed several new rights, including the ability to officially change their name or gender. Victims of violence will also have access to a reparation fund. Congress passed a law in October of last year. An official report reveals that Bolivia no longer occupies the last place in terms of minimum wage in the American continent. Let's find out more about the country's continued economic growth.
In 2019, the minimum wage increased by just 3%, as one of the minor readjustments in 13 years of the current administration, but the amount reveals the steady economic growth that the country has enjoyed.
In 2005, Bolivia was the country that had the lowest minimum national wage in the region, at just $54 a month, or 440 Bolivianos. Today, minimum wage stands at 2.1 Bolivianos, which equals $305. As such, we have surpassed the minimum wages of Brazil, Colombia, Peru, and Argentina.
In the time of neoliberal governments, wages were frozen for years at a time. With the current administration, every year salaries are readjusted in relation to past inflation figures.
At the moment, we stand in the middle of the chart. Chile is still at the top, with a minimum wage of $452. They are followed by Uruguay at $445, Ecuador with $394, and Paraguay with $341. We stand very close to Paraguay.
The annual readjustment of wages is done following negotiations with labor unions.
It's true. Every year we have been increasing wages, doing what we can to help workers.
These agreements are based on a request presented by labor unions to the government.
We not only discussed the wage issue, but we have said that we need to strengthen national companies like Yacimientos, Ende and Entel. We are even reevaluating our lithium reserves, and we are asking to develop iron ore in Mutún.
President Evo Morales says he governs along with social organizations and unions, to which he has assigned the role of a social cabinet and with whose representatives he met at least once a month.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Authorities in Curaçao say a Church of Scientology ship will remain quarantined. That is until they determine how many of the 318 people on board might be infected with measles. 277 blood samples were taken and sent to the Netherlands. Those results are expected by midweek. The ship was previously quarantined in St. Lucia after a crew member was diagnosed with measles. Trinidad and Tobago's former Attorney General and an opposition senator have both appeared in court on corruption charges. Anand Ramlogan and Gerald Ramdeen were read the charges arising out of an alleged fee kickback scam at the AG's office. The scam allegedly took place while Ramlogan held the position from 2010 to 2015. The two men were not called upon to enter a plea. The cases were adjourned until June 28th.
After November 30th, 2018.
There are plans for CARICOM to go to the Inter-American Development Bank to purchase resources for the region's security architecture and assets. The CARICOM chairman made the announcement at the end of the 19th special meeting of CARICOM heads in Trinidad.
This mechanism would allow for the widest range of security assistance to be provided to any requesting member state within CARICOM.
The Caribbean has lost a leading advocate for HIV patients and a prominent medical expert. Antiguan doctor Sir Prince Ramsey passed away at 76. The physician died at a hospital in Antigua on Friday. He was the recipient of the 2018 UN Population Award in recognition of his many achievements. Dr. Ramsey worked to destigmatize HIV and AIDS as he promoted services to prevent mother-to-child transmissions.
Did you enjoy those 16 years? Was it trying? Was it...
At least 58 people have been killed in Niger when a fuel tanker exploded near the international airport in the capital, Niamey. Health officials said 40 people have sustained injuries and are hospitalized. According to witnesses, the victims were trying to collect fuel leaking from the truck after it overturned on railway tracks. Journalists in Libya have protested in Tripoli against the abduction of their colleagues. The journalists held placards and marched out in the streets demanding the release of Mohammed al-Kourih and Mohammed al-Shabani, who worked for Libya's Al-Ahrar TV. The two journalists were covering clashes near Tripoli for a private TV channel and were detained by a group loyal to Khalifa Haftar on Thursday. Their fate remains unknown.
We are protesting today to support our colleagues Mohammed al-Kourih and Mohammed al-Shabani, who were abducted last Thursday. We don't have any news about them or what's become of them. We hope that the organizations who abduct them will free them.
Election week has kicked off in South Africa. On Monday, the country's electoral commission conducted special votes ahead of the main voting day on Wednesday. The elderly, the sick, and all those who won't be able to vote on the official voting day cast their ballots.
The country's biggest political players have wrapped up their campaigns. It's been 25 years of independence from the white minority apartheid rule, and now South Africans are judging the governing ANC party on its gains in the last 2.5 decades. Party leader Cyril Ramaphosa has urged voters to forgive the party for its mistakes and give it another chance.
This is a moment where we must choose to return to a path of conflict and anger, of corruption and also hunger, or we can choose to embark on a path of renewal and go forward.
The second biggest party in the country, the Democratic Alliance, is convinced it will increase its electoral support after a campaign that poked holes in the ANC's 25 years in power.
This is our moment to step out of our comfort zone. We're going to look to the future now. And on Wednesday, we're going to make a brave choice on Wednesday. We want to think about our children when we vote on Wednesday. But above all, we're going to be brave and brave for our people. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy, but I'm telling you it's going to be worth it.
There's also the game changer in South African politics. The Economic Freedom Fighters is a splinter group of the ANC and has become a force to be reckoned with in the short time since its establishment in 2013.
We are not fighting against whites. We are fighting to sit on the dinner table. White people, you will no longer eat alone. We are coming to sit on the dinner table, and if you are refusing us on a dinner table, we are going to destroy that dinner table. No one is going to eat until all of us in South Africa eat from the same dinner table.
South Africans have more than 40 parties to choose from in this year's election. Political analysts believe the big parties may lose support to the smaller, newer parties. With many voters still undecided according to polls, it remains to be seen if traditional voting patterns will change. Matuba Mahlachi, Telesur in Johannesburg.
A court in Gabon has rejected a case filed by a group of activists seeking to compel President Ali Bongo to undergo a medical evaluation to determine his fitness for office. In the ruling dated May 2nd, the court said that there was no basis to bring the matter to court. It also ruled that only the two houses of parliament can apply to the Constitutional Court to declare the office of the president vacant. Questions about Bongo's health have been raised since he suffered a stroke in October. Human Rights Watch has accused Cameroonian authorities of violations connected to the separatist uprising in the west of the country. The group alleges that severe beatings and near drownings have been used to extract confessions from detainees suspected of ties to armed separatist groups. The organization claims that detainees are being held incommunicated at the State Defense Secretariat in the capital, Yaoundé. The government has not commented the accusations. The International Criminal Court has announced that Jordan will not be referred to the UN Security Council for failing to arrest former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir for war crimes. The split decision by the 5-judge panel reverses a previous decision by the ICC. But the court has upheld a reprimand of Jordan for not arresting Bashir in 2017 when he attended an Arab League summit. This despite there being 2 international warrants for the ousted Sudanese president arrest. Bashir has traveled to a number of countries over the past decade without being arrested. Archaeologists in Egypt have unveiled part of an ancient cemetery near the pyramids of Gaza outside Cairo. Officials from the Ministry of Antiquities said the cemetery is believed to be over 4,500 years old. The cemetery houses burial shafts, tombs of top officials, and a fine limestone statue from the Old Kingdom's 5th dynasty. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The exiled Catalan President Carles Puigdemont, promoter of the region's independence, will be able to run in European Union elections despite protests from Spain's most prominent right-wing parties. A complaint made by both the Popular and Ciudadanos parties to prevent Puigdemont and 2 other exiled Catalan politicians from participating was initially upheld by the Spanish Electoral Commission, but it was later rejected by a judge as a violation of their basic right to run. Whether they will be prevented from taking office remains to be seen. Turkey's electoral authorities have ordered a new election for Istanbul's mayor. Ekrem İmamoğlu of the main opposition Republican People's Party was declared mayor on April 17th, but President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's party lodged an objection and asked for a new election alleging voting irregularities. Now election board members have accepted the party's objection with 7 votes in favor and 4 against. The new vote will be held on June 23rd. At least 26 fighters have been killed in Syria after government forces carried out airstrikes in northern Hama on Monday. According to authorities, 15 government fighters were among those killed in fierce fighting. The fighting came as regime forces advanced on 2 villages and a strategic hilltop in the region. Authorities say this is in response to stepped-up attacks by the rebel army on government-held areas, denying that the strikes were indiscriminate. The month of Ramadan fasting has begun for millions of Muslims around the world. For the entire holy month, Muslims will be abstaining from food and drink between dawn and dusk. They're also encouraged to focus on meditative acts like prayer, reading the Quran, and charity. However, millions more in India, Pakistan, and Iran will likely be marking the start of the lunar month on Tuesday, based on moon sightings in the region. The end of Ramadan is met with a holiday called Eid al-Fitr, and so we say Ramadan Mubarak to our Muslim brothers and sisters across the world. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.